The sage has been outlining the hunter's destiny. The hunter's going to become this giant corpse which devastates the earth plane when it falls onto it. And then he will become the king of the Sindhu region, who conquered King Viduratha, who was the husband of Queen Leela. And it seems that this king will have an enlightened minister who will tell the king why he was successful in conquest, even though Queen Leela had the goddess Saraswati on her side. The king will be informed by the minister that King Viduratha had wanted liberation, and the king of Sindhu had wanted victory. The sage continued, "You will say, what did I do in the past birth that I was subjected to such an evil habit of thought?" This is the habit that wanted conquest rather than liberation. The minister will reply, "I shall reveal the secret to you. There is something which exists without beginning and without end, as I and you, etc., but which is known as Brahman. That Brahman became its own object of awareness, and therefore it became the jiva and then the mind. This subtle psychological or ethereal body condensed into physical body." I prefer the word coalesced, because physical seems too physical. It's all dreamlike. There's a coalescing going on from subtlety to apparent physicality. It is but the mind which has no form, but which exists as if it has a form. And this is like a dream, isn't it? The dream has form, the dream body has form. It all seems external and real, but there's no form there at all. It's all the mind. And we do not discriminate between dream and waking anymore. So it's all the mind. The mind alone is this world. There is no distinction between the two. Satva alone arose in Brahman originally, and sattva is the purest form of mind. And it has now become extremely dense and dull. And the description for this is tamasa-tamasa. You will say, what is this tamasa-tamasa, and how did it arise in the supreme state? And this is the question again. How does this world appearance arise in the supreme? Why should it? What's the cause of it? And there's lots of stories about why this happens, but they all boil down to there is no creation. Just as a dream is a dream, there's only the apparent creation of the world. I thought of a little analogy with numbers, which may or may not be helpful. The counting numbers beginning with 1, then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then we normally have ... and then we say, and so on until infinity. As if infinity was some imaginary end to the process. But every number is simply one more than the previous number. There is no infinity. The process goes on eternally. There's no end to the process. There's no number which does not have one more than it. So in a way, infinity doesn't exist. There's just this eternal process going on. I said that every number is one more than the preceding number. And this is true for every number except 1. And in a way, every other number is constructed from the number 1. 2 is 2 ones, 3 is 3 ones, 4 is 4 ones, and so on. So every number is essentially 1. It's made up of 1. So it's actually 1. It's actually unity, which is infinite in nature. And you see what we had to do there? We had to look back from the ... in the opposite direction. We think of infinity as very, very big. But there's no infinity in that sense. There's just an ongoing process. If you want infinity, you've got to change the direction in which you're looking. You have to come back to the original unity, the original oneness. This is our awareness. This is our awareness which, as it says here, becomes its own object. It starts thinking about itself, and that's when all the other numbers arise. That's when the infinite process continues generating new numbers, new notions, new ideas. But let's see what the minister says. The minister will say, living beings here have various limbs. Even so the subtle self or consciousness has, so to say, the subtle ethereal body as its limb. That itself thinks of itself as the gross body with the physical elements like earth. That itself functions with the help of its own notions in this world appearance, which arises in the same consciousness as in a dream. You yourself entertain in your own ethereal body the notion, this is the densest darkness, and thus that notion is born. We have the notion of physicality, of concreteness. It seems that it's not notional, but it is. We've explored this before. All these diversities exist in Brahman, though it is absolutely pure. The first notion that arises in Brahman when it becomes a jiva, as it were, and the jiva is when the first notion arises, is experienced by the buddhi, the intelligence, as perfect purity, sattvika. When it enters into the stream of life, and if it is endowed with all the noble qualities, it is known as mere sattvika birth. The birth which arises in the stream of life and which is subjected to diverse pleasures, but directed towards liberation, is called rajas. When the body arises in the stream of life, and when it is devoid of noble qualities, it is known as simple rajasa. When the being has been in the stream of life for a very long time and has just turned towards liberation, it is known as tamasa-tamasa. But the ordinary birth, which is one in the sequence of several oriented towards liberation, is known as simple tamasa. So this is the usual classification of sattva, rajas and tamas. It seems that even with tamas, we're all bound for liberation. In this manner, there are very many classifications of births. You were born in the tamasa-tamasa class. You have had many births, and so have I. I know them, you do not. Wandering in all these, you have wasted a lot of time. Because you are so conditioned, you found it difficult to free yourself. You will say, how can I overcome the effect of such past life? The minister will say, there is nothing that one who strives without agitation cannot achieve. Yesterday's evil action is transformed into good action by today's noble deeds. Therefore strive to be good and do good now. One strives to attain what one wishes to attain, and surely one will attain it. Being thus advised by the minister, the King Sindhu will at once renounce the kingdom and resort to a forest. He will take refuge at the feet of the holy ones. By their very association, he will gain the highest wisdom and will be liberated.